halfway somewhere.
Oh, you think this is a halfway somewhere?
It's halfway to 100.
Mm.
Still here.
Mm.
Do we have a topic?
We have a topic.
Would you like to introduce it?
um, yeah, so like not a one-word introduction, more of like a concept, but so flowing energetically through your life, consciously or subconsciously propagating a certain type of energy, either good or bad, or like tension or relaxation, and then how that flow affects us, and most eminently our outcomes of our life, like literally the reflection of our life. Again, right, spill. And then two, you know, through actually the choice into that, then it affects everyone around us, and then thus the outcomes of perceived earth happenings. And so there's like multitude of ways to approach this, multitude of ways to take this. In some form, you would say that this is kind of what manifestation is. But I don't want to throw that word into this definition because it is completely misinterpreted right now.
Yeah.
So more so, I almost see this as your personal energetic expression. Maybe you can even look at it as like the energy that flows through the chakra systems, or the energy that is the cumulative representation of all chakra systems. So instead of dividing into however many numbers you want to count to, actually seeing the wholeness of that energy as one, and then what is the intent?
Right.
And so the intent is different than manifestation, the mainstream terminology of manifestation.
Right. And, in this, then there's another running theme for the whole podcast is that you could be doing the same thing for various reasons.
Yeah.
And you can do the right thing, but you can do it for the wrong reason. And that will probably bring it will bring the wrong energy into it. And how that will affect the outcome, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it is, in my opinion, it's less likely to go well than if you were to bring the right, you know, heart energy into it. When I say wrong energy, it's a pain body energy. You're doing it out of some sort of obligation isn't even the right word. Although obligation can lead to the wrong thing.
Yeah, or making up obligation, or like making up for the past.
Yeah,
The example that we're facing this morning, this topic came up yesterday when I was dealing with whatever I was dealing with yesterday. But 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 if you live in life where you have regrets, which, let's be honest, like all of us do, right? Like to some extent before you start actually becoming aware of things. A lot of the times the action forward, the good action forward, comes out of the net outcome of the past regret.
right. So you're trying to move forward almost in order to offset your perceived regret or something you did wrong or something you didn't do right or something you missed or something like
Right.
that. So it's all in a very real sense tainted by the past, by some perceived negativity of the past.
Yeah, and we do not spend time consciously trying to. Yeah, it's completely undrinkable. Sorry. I completely overheated our cacao this morning. um yeah, we consciously do not recognize. It is very hard to see energetically to begin with. I see it energetically, but even consciously recognize that the energy of movement forward, right? As positive as it might seem, like, oh, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to uh, donate to charity, or I'm going to volunteer, or I'm going to give gifts to someone, or I'm going to go and celebrate something with them, or I'm going to reach out and congratulate them, right? All of those things, like, you would go, wait, well, all of those things are really nice, good things. Why would you ever do any of those things out of, and then perceive them to be bad? So, and by bad, I don't actually mean that those things within themselves are bad. They're not. But a lot of the time, and this is what I want to point out, and this is the nuance that is overlooked, it comes out of the energy of regret for the past. And then by default, it can only carry the propagation of its origin forward. So you could be getting a birthday wish from somebody, and they're there and they're celebrating with you, and you're happy and they're happy. And the truth behind that birthday wish could be that this is coming out of some sort of, like, oh, I have to make up for all the wrongdoing that I did to this person and make them feel super happy for their birthday in order to offset the lifetime of bullshit that I offered to them.
Right. Or it doesn't even have to be connected to that person. It could be, oh, when I was young, I didn't get a birthday wish, so I'm going to go out of my way to make sure that other people do, kind of
Yeah,
situation.
sure. I mean, that's the obvious personalized pain body. But in this case, what I'm giving example of a personalized pain body for the makeup of the awareness of the wrongdoing.
To try to
Undo the
karmically
wrong.
undo something.
Yes. Right. So those are two different lines. Yeah. We're less likely to be aware that we're doing something positive, like celebrating someone's birthday and wanting to make it super special for them, because I never had super special birthdays. Like, that's a little bit deeper, even almost a little bit harder to admit to yourself. But it was easier, maybe even to admit to yourself, is that, oh yeah, I'm coming to celebrate this person's birthday because I think I have wronged them in some way, and this is my karmic penance, right? And so that energy of that negativity, or that origin, like, I would say it is the origin of that story.
Yeah,
This particular story.
the root reason behind why you're doing this, why
Yeah.
you do whatever action it is. Yeah, and it's like, again, it's like, happy giving someone a happy birthday. Nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but it's what you're bringing to it that really can change it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's strange because from the person who's on the receivable end of it, right? It is, unless you're, psychically aware, you would sense that there's something off, right? Because it wouldn't feel right. It
Mhm.
would not feel right if somebody's coming to offer you kindness out of a wrong place of being.
Yeah.
Even subconscious to them, right? Like,
Right.
but it wouldn't come out of a place of sincerity. And so the net difference of how it would showcase itself, or how it would feel for those who would be, blind to the, like, the details and the nuances of that, is it wouldn't feel open-hearted. It wouldn't feel
Genuine.
genuine. It wouldn't feel like that you would almost be able to see the act behind the masking of what the real intent is.
Right.
It's a quite literally an act. Like, the entire body of the giver would be putting on an act in order to act out how it would feel, or how it's supposed to feel in
Yeah.
this scenario, as opposed to,
It's a big performance.
yes, but it's subconscious, because what the energy that is feeding the act is actually something that would look very differently and would feel very differently. But because we're coming in, and I say this, other people do it, but I'm guilty of it myself. I used to do this, I guess. I don't remember any particular instances right now, but I'm sure there
I
were some.
know, because I'm like, I know exactly how it feels to do it, even though I'm struggling to come up with
Yeah,
an example.
but from the implementation standpoint, you almost feel like an actor because the essence of you is elsewhere. You actually don't feel like like deep down your intuitive self knows that one, you shouldn't be here. You're actually bringing negativity to the
Yeah, there's
situation.
something awry with it all.
Yeah, and you yourself, even if you're not completely conscious of your own negative propagation, you feel off. And so it's either you feel off, you acknowledge it, and you're basically trying to actively overcome it by inserting all the right tools and all the right definitions into any one endeavor in order to make it seem like this is something or a place where you should be. Or you're completely subconscious about it, and then your body is almost inserting all the right movements, and you're acting out a play. You're acting out a scenario.
Yeah, yeah. And then from the receiver's end, there have been, I mean, again, I don't know if I can come up with examples, but I know exactly how it feels to receive that too. Because it
Yeah.
is like, it's like, why are you really here type of situation,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I mean, depending on the how deep it is and how meaningful it is to them and how much they need to, I guess, make up for it, or how
They feel
deep the pain by role is.
obligation
Yeah.
or
And
whatever.
how, I guess, good of an actor they are. And depending on all these things, it may be anywhere from super blatant to super subtle, but it's there.
Yeah. Well, one of the examples that you and I used to experience, you used to want to like hug me and like have me hug you back and kiss me and have me kiss you back, right?
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I say a long time, but uh, that you which right, if you think about it, like, oh, husband and wife, and husband is initiating affection or initiating
Hmm.
intimacy,
Right.
right? And so on the surface, for first decade of our life together, and if maybe not even more than a decade, that is what it was. That is how I was trying to interpret that act. I'm like, oh, look, well, Elliot is just trying to be intimate and to initiate love and to whatever.
Yeah.
But deep down, it feels like shit. And then I had like, there's this part of you, like, I almost feel naive about it because at the time, basically, what you're doing is you're denying yourself your intuitive knowing that something is awry here. And so it felt like shit. And I'm like, why does it feel like shit? Why does it feel like shit? But I would just kind of like brush it off, or, to begin with, you don't know what to think.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of times not knowing what to think. And I try to respond the right way, but it actually feels deep down nauseating. It feels nauseating to engage, right? And so sooner or later, I'm not saying this as a attack on you. I know it's our anniversary today, so this topic is applicable. But it took me a long, long time to realize. Honestly, not until I started to become spiritually aware, like past my 2017. Maybe I was even. Were we trying to talk about this before 2017?
I mean, yeah, in as much as we would have, I guess, fights about it. But, I wouldn't, I had no vocabulary to even understand what that meant.
No, but did prior to 2017, were we aware of what it was we were actually hitting on? Like, did we figure that out or
I
no?
don't know. Something was wrong, and you could tell something was wrong, and I could tell something was wrong in as much as you're telling me something is wrong. But I didn't know what it was, where it was coming from, or how to fix it at all.
Did you feel like I was just attacking you for no reason?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, you know, now I can see, would just kind of feed into that. That's the cycle of it all,
Yeah.
which would just, make it worse. If everything's being looked at through these particular lenses, then it's just, oh, this is just going to get worse before it gets better. Like, so I'm approaching you for affection because I don't feel loved. Not specifically through you. I just don't, didn't feel loved or even lovable.
Yeah, so you're just
Right.
trying to
I'm trying
use
to
any form
anything
of
to get some
affection.
sort, to get affection in order to kind of, reaffirm or prove to myself that I am lovable. And so that was, a very real motivation for, approaching you at all. Right. And then if you would, you know, either reject it or say this doesn't feel right or whatever, that would just, reinforce that there's something wrong with me. Because, I would just assume it's my fault. So it's not you, it's me. And then that would just, deepen that, void that I felt inside of me. And now I need even more, you know. And
Yeah.
so then I'm,
Well, because you're coming out of a process of
right,
pain,
right,
you're trying to fill the hole that is pain.
right,
And if it doesn't get filled the right way, then you are more aware of this hole that is
right.
pain.
Yeah. So being, if I'm not getting it, then that's, I'm being rejected, whether explicitly or implicitly, or even worse, hey, this doesn't feel right. What's going on? Type of situation, which just, points it out even more. And then that
Well, no,
just,
to begin with, that was my start of a conversation. I don't know what is going on. This doesn't feel right.
right.
Because
But,
what else can I say?
right. But I would take that as an accusation that there's something wrong with me, which, there was, let's be honest here. But, that would just make that hole bigger and deeper is where that went. And so now I have a bigger, deeper hole to fill. So now I'm, I have a stronger need to fill it. And so that's what I mean by it's this vicious cycle. If you're looking at it through I guess you were actually looking at it through the right lens. But then I wasn't looking at the response to the right lens. I was taking it as an attack and I wasn't actually realizing what was going on inside of me. And so it just death spiral.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. If if you are, in my position, and maybe this is what I don't have life wisdom. At the time, I did not have any life wisdom. I still don't have life wisdom, but at the time, I had, like a negative life wisdom, right? So that naiveness and almost, I don't have wisdom into psychology. I don't have wisdom into, um, like social interactions, or like trauma or pain or depression. Do you know what I mean? All these deeper topics, psychological topics. I don't know anything about them, right? And the only thing that I know is, oh, when I feel like shit, I know I feel like shit. And then with me, maybe being an only child or maybe being raised in kind of like that survival mode, I withdraw, right? And I try to zero in what is it that I'm actually feeling that is producing this feeling, right? That has always been the cycle with me, kind of like a coping mechanism of like, okay, I don't know, I feel bad, I don't know what is it I feel. Okay, let me figure out how is it I feel. Okay, I feel this because of this, and then just like defining of that circumstance allowed me to understand my personal gauges on my psychic standing, let's say, right? I didn't have to like have definitions on it, but you almost don't need definitions, but as long as you understand where you're coming from. This is before what you and I talk about as far as awareness and trauma processing and pain body recognition and all of that. This is like me in my 20s stumbling through, like just realizing what is it that triggers me. And so to me, the idea of someone coming into someone else's personal space because they feel like shit and they're unaware, and then they need somebody else to do something for them just in the right way in order for them not to feel like they're losing it and spiraling it out. And it's kind of like that codependent state of
That's
being.
what it was. It was codependence.
I didn't have a definition for that. Like, I did not have that as like, oh, somebody else would go to somebody else and try to get to someone else, unbeknownst to even them, feel something or validate something or do anything with it.
Validate. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Right. And so, like, it took me forever to even recognize that that is what was happening, because I never thought that somebody would go externally out for help, as opposed to with me. Only thing I have ever known is I would go solely inside and then seek help inside, within my own psyche, within my own awareness, even if it's in a young, naive, immature state of being, or do the best, but by going inside. Yeah. And so from that is our example of how doing the right thing, which, husband and wife being affectionate with each other, or husband initiating affection, or wife initiating affection. In our case, that was it. That was like my training ground for what, like, I know this is supposed to be all the right things in all the right places, but it sure does feel like shit. Right. And so in your intuition, at least on my end, on the end of a receiver, will always kind of like spike you into some sort of response of where you would feel the right energy behind it and see through the act. And on your end, or like at the time, whenever you were initiating it, I think your intuition does.
Yeah. So like looking back, I can tell that there was something was off when I was doing it, right? And it's in a it's I don't think it's terribly far off from some sort of like addict type thing who needs a fix. My fix was, validation and, through affection.
Well, your
So
fix is you're codependent to seek any type of
yeah.
feeling low or feeling down in the outside world. But then the spikes that initiate that are plenty. Either I'm not lovable, or I'm inherently bad, or I'm not good enough. Do you know what I mean? All of those things were are triggers.
Yeah.
But the codependency behind the act of how I make myself feel better, or how I make myself there's the word in psychotherapy, soothe, but there's this medical term for it. Regulate.
Regulate, yeah.
How I regulate that is through an outside environment.
Yeah.
And so outside validation.
Yeah. But I mean, I know that there's like this nervous jitteriness that I would bring to it.
Yeah, but that's your body's response. So you can almost intuitively, in the past, could have tuned into that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look, I'm
Yeah, I mean, I
feeling.
could tell that it was there, and it didn't make sense. Why would this be there? But I don't know. I never.
It took us a long time for me to go, okay, you need to recognize you when you're feeling that, and don't come to me. I'm not saying no, do not initiate affection or do not initiate love. But I think at some point before we figured out what it actually was and how to define it and position it, it's kind of hard to remember, to go back in the clusterfuck of shit that was 5 or 10 years ago. And you're like, wait, how did I even deal with that? But that's what it was, is we defined it. Okay, what if you just identify the net energy inside?
Yeah.
And then be aware of that. If you're not aware how you feel, you can at least be aware. Okay, if I sit back and I go, okay, what am I actually flowing? Like what's going through me? And if you identify it in any way and at the time I think we parameterized it out to like, okay, jittery, like, which is so immature on our end.
Right.
But that was the only coping mechanism we had.
that was I guess what I needed at the time, because then I could, oh, wait a minute. I don't know what's wrong, but I know something is wrong because,
Yeah. Yeah. And so to begin with, if you're not aware of where you're coming from, your body does hold the signature of the actual origin of that action. And so away from a personal example now into a kind of like larger picture, that is where you can start to identify your 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 kind of like the core energy that you're um spiraling out of your being, right? Because a lot of times we uh come bringing in my yesterday's example and then like by trying to analyze it this morning, a lot of times we're not even aware that we are tense or we are afraid or we are like in some sort of like lockdown mode of like safety triggers, right? But I think if we just pause and go, wait, what, like if I'm not doing anything, right? Just, and then what am I actually vibrating? Like, what am I actually feeling? And where's it coming from? And a lot of times there's just a lot behind that.
Yeah, that's the thing is that it's. I mean, it used to be. I I didn't even know what that meant. You know, until the last few years. That saying that made no sense to me at all. Um, but that is basically it. Is yeah, where's this coming from? Because depending on where it's coming from, it will feel very differently.
Mm-hmm.
It will feel open and 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 joyous and pure, or it'll feel something else, which is with me, it presents as a nervous jitteriness. I assume everybody has their own special flavor of how that physically presents in their body.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, we started watching the National Geographic Limitless series that the first season is with Chris Helmsworth,
mm,
and they talk about stress, and then like all the cortisol and adrenaline that gets released,
mm.
and the body, flight and fight mode that gets initiated, right? But that is kind of like the obvious way. Like, oh, look, I'm in a stressful situation. So the obvious way is you can feel the intensity of that.
Yeah, which is obvious if you're climbing out on a crane over a roof. But
Yeah, but for us, that's our state of being, period,
24/7,
without any imminent danger.
right? I mean that's the premise of that, at least that episode. Same thing with the Bruce Lipton thing. It's that we evolved to have where our body will squirt out cortisol and adrenaline when we need it in order to escape from the saber-toothed tiger, and that's all fine and good. But living in a state where your system is flooded with cortisol, at least all day every day, will kill you. Like you will literally die from it. It will turn into heart disease and diabetes and all these other things, high blood pressure. Just it will kill you. It's squirting out this essentially poison into your body. It's useful in small doses to escape from saber-toothed tigers. We don't have many saber-toothed tigers anymore.
Yeah.
We have Bill at the office, and then and that just gets you going, and you react inappropriately internally to Bill, and B, you never let it go.
Yeah.
And it's not just Bill, it's the traffic, it's your kids, it's your spouse, it's your mortgage, it's everything ends up feeding it. And we 21st century people can't deal with this type of stress.
Yeah, but this is what I want to point out. All of that is kind of like a known science that everybody accepts right now. And
Mhm.
it's not called pseudoscience anymore. It's like, okay, well, this is just what science is, right? But I want to extend exactly in the same way, just like you would respond with cortisol and adrenaline to a physical event in the world that is traffic, that is your kids flipping out, that is you bill at the office or whatever. In that same way, you respond and, in fact, carry and hold the tension of unprocessed trauma and pain that is the origin of that lock, right? So the body, when you say the body constricts, right, and then you're just in some form of tension because of these extreme triggers. Let's say in the show, whatever the extreme situation he's putting himself into, but like in our situation, traffic, right, or Bill at the office. That tension is the trigger that feeds into the deeper value of that hold. That is your childhood unprocessed trauma or trauma from the past lives. Right? Does that make sense?
Right. I mean, it's easy to see when you're 900 feet above the ground that it's death. I'm afraid of falling and dying. That's super super obvious.
Yeah.
It is the guy at the office or traffic. There's no death. There's no imminent danger. There's no at some level it doesn't make sense that we would respond that way to the mundane aspects of modern life. Maybe they're slightly annoying, right? But we do. We react our body. There's no difference between, almost falling off a building and sitting in traffic. Right? Maybe there's a difference in scale, but there's still, even sitting in traffic, there's low level cortisol being pumped into you and it's killing you. And it's causing all kinds of terrible things. But I think, maybe not the acute ones of falling to your doom, but the chronic ones do stem back to childhood issues.
I guess to me, this is how I almost see it, and let me know if I'm doing a good job explaining this or not. But we have, I'm kind of talking about identification of it right now, right? More so than not. So we have come a long way trying to identify that, like, oh, human survival 101 is body response in this way when threatened with physical harm, right? And we have kind of like identified that. And then we have identified that, oh, look, but because we don't have saber-toothed tigers, now we have traffic and Bobs or Bills. And so now Bills and Bobs have replaced the saber-toothed tigers. And this is kind of like how our body responds now in lieu of the tiger.
Yeah. But, I'm almost making a difference between like acute stuff, which it is appropriate to react to. I think, some amount of stress or cortisol is an appropriate response to what Chris Hemsworth did in that episode was he had to walk across a crane 900 feet in the air. I think that is a normal response to that. I think there's something up with you if you don't have an elevated heart rate doing that. I think any normal person would, whether it's a caveman or a modern person. And then there's the chronic stuff that is
But why?
just
But the question is why?
why. I mean, that almost seems
Why
like
do we think that that's
physiological.
normal? Why do we think that is normal? Like, yes, that is. I agree that is the common, but why is it the stand? Why is it?
I think that the difference is that is something that is not normal. It is a one-off experience where there is a, I mean, not just perceived, but an actual, risk. He's strapped in, he's cable. Even if he falls, he's not falling to his doom. He's just going to hang there.
Yeah.
But that doesn't logic. You can't logic panic away.
Yeah, but I think what they are trying to draw, and then maybe what I'm trying to draw is, you can be in an uncomfortable situation, but still be able to be aware.
Yes. Yeah.
And then thus not have your heart rate go out and not have the cold sweats
Right.
And jitters.
No, I think that is a I think that is probably possible. That is and anywhere from completely overreacting to having zero reaction. Anything you can do to pull it in, whether that's breathing exercises or mantras or whatnot, helps amazingly, especially in these acute situations. To if all of a sudden someone broke into the house and with a gun and was threatening to shoot your kids or something, anyone would be very worked up about that. Does being worked up actually help? Maybe not.
No, but so to clarify, I don't think that is a fear-based response.
It is a
of a
fear-based
complete
response.
shutdown.
It is I mean, it is a fear-based response, and your brain thinks I'm afraid something bad's about to happen, and it sets off all these internal processes to squirt hormones into you and whatever, which does all these things inside your body, which you can counteract through breath work, through positive reinforcement, through whatnot, through training.
But what I guess going back to our point, the counteraction there is the awareness.
Yeah,
of its source.
You have to be aware.
So it's easy to become aware of the fact that, look, here's a saber-toothed tiger, or here's me walking on the edge.
Yes and no. I mean, when he went in to do the firefighting thing, he's like, yeah, all that, control your breathing, all that went out the window. It was get in, get the thing. He's like, I completely forgot about the breathing.
Well, no, what I'm saying is it is easy to be aware when you're in a stressful situation with fire rescue, or you know that this is a stressful situation.
Oh yeah, I mean,
whether or not you choose to
you're aware you're aware it's stressful. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you are aware of what is it that you're feeling. This is what I want to find out. You're aware in the extreme dangerous situation that this is what you're feeling. You're feeling it because it's a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
But with Bob at the office, you're unaware of the feeling.
Exactly. The chronic ones are
and
sneaky.
When you come to a birthday party to wish someone happy birthday,
you're not aware.
Out of love and life, you're not aware. So this is what my point is with science, we have went, oh, look, here's saber-toothed tigers and here's how react. But what I'm saying is that is the same thing as here's complete unawareness of why we go to someone else's birthday. It is the awareness behind the act then forces their response to be energetically calm and pleasant and actually wish fulfilling of somebody else's birthdays, or complete clusterfuck of shit where you're in chaos running around wanting to scream out of fear.
Yeah. Without the awareness, you're stuck in whatever default response your body's going to do, which is going to be panic and
But when you go to someone's birthday, the panic and fear is there. And I know this is extreme, right? This is like you are thinking about you're dying, but instead you're going to someone else's birthday. This is an extreme situation. But what I want to say, that is what it actually is to some extent.
Right.
Is that you're going into a scenario where you perceive everything to be love and light. I will use that as a, kind of like a sarcastic term here. But in actuality is you're screaming in fear because you're on a ledge getting ready to fall off of a building.
Yeah.
And that's the energy that you carry with you into the birthday. And that is what everybody else around you feels. And that is what the reality of the truth is that you're bringing into this situation. Unbeknownst to self, you're acting out all the right actions of what being love and light is at somebody's birthday party. But the truth energy that you're unaware of and blind to is that saber-toothed tiger.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
This is what I'm trying to point out.
Okay, yeah.
Is that scientifically we have kind of like identify this wobbly area of being, and we can kind of correlate it to this wobbly area of being, but we didn't take it all the way down and went, well, no, that's just the foundational practice of our lifetime, period. Whether you're aware that Bob is ticking you off, whether or not you're aware that you're on a ledge getting ready to fall off of a building, or whether you're visiting someone's birthday out of that space.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I would have connected that, yeah, I knew that there's, chronic stress from traffic and Bob at the office and all that nonsense. People have that. Yes. But then connecting it to, oh, and that's, basically the same thing that's driving a lot of behavior, a lot of ostensibly positive behavior, congratulating birthdays and, you know,
Going to work,
going to, well,
raising
yeah,
your children,
all these things,
asking love from your partner.
Yeah. But
it's the same.
But it is the same thing.
It is the same thing from from the scientific standpoint.
Survival instinct
behavior
that is being triggered, and it's all being fueled by fear and anxiety. Anxiety is just fear of projected into the future. It's present day fear of an unknown future, which is, as someone who has had a lot of anxiety, it's when you define it like that, it sounds extra silly.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of, what is it, like guilt or shame is like fear projected backwards almost into the past. Anxiety is just fear projected forward.
Yeah. But if we are functioning in that blindness and then unawareness, it is the same thing as that lock. The energetic lock that I'm talking about that has the energy coming out of the wrong source is the energy out of that rudimentary fight for survival. And then whatever this action happens to be is basically, unless you're aware of it and unless you're exploring it and going, wait, do I want this energy to come out of this place? It is coming out of that rudimentary, like survival, cortisone, adrenaline rush lock. And then you're in the world, that is your baseline, period. Like, as long as you're functioning in your unaware self of pain and trauma, you're in the world in that baseline period. Of course, you don't want to recognize that within yourself, because then, one, that's success, and then two, you have to do something about it. And so then you're putting on an act to compensate for the fact that this is your reality. And so whenever people say like, oh, I compartmentalize, or, I'm this person in this scenario, I'm that person in that scenario, and I'm this way with these people, and I'm that way with these people. All those are acts to hide away the trauma that is this lock that you have on yourself. That is the same thing that you would feel, like Chris Hemsworth does at the top of that 900 feet building.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we are, we are trying to become aware to our own invention of bullshit through like, okay, well, here's what stress and cortisol and acute stress does.
Right.
But what we're not doing is taking those definitions and taking them to the core and recognizing that, no, we're not even in it through triggers, through bobs and traffic. We're in it, period, as long as we're holding on to unprocessed pain and trauma from our childhood. And then if you spiritually open and aware, from our past life.
Yeah.
And it's coming out of that root that it's not, it is absolutely unescapable in any way possible into the future until you address the core of the past. Right? So to, like, I'm not trying to harp on Chris Hemsworth here or his psychologist. But right, he's like, oh well, if I can put myself in these stressful situations, and I can teach my body to calm the system down whenever I am basically facing the saber-toothed tiger, but I'm like teaching to calm my system down, I will live longer, right? Like in Western world, we believe that having your body calmer in the long haul prolongs life
Right.
because there's less stress and cortisol, and then therefore the heart and the whatever,
Yeah.
whatever this medical interpretation of it is,
Right.
which is valid. But in like he goes on. I will use this as an example, so I'm not harping on it. I'm just using an example. For example, he says that I went into acting because my parents were super poor, and my dad and I were talking, and he said that, oh yeah, I have this loan on the bank, and this is how you have a house. And I guess Chris's naive question was, well, when would you going to pay that off? And Dad's answer was like, well, never.
I'll die with it.
I'll die with having this
Still
loan on the bank.
money, yeah.
Right. And so he went into acting from the pain body standpoint of trying to help his parents out of whatever perceived version of poverty that he has as his way forward.
Right. Which almost, you could almost sounds like this noble thing at the surface.
No, it is. It is. I
Right.
mean, it's right.
Except.
Yeah. And so in the show, what's interesting is he says that, and then it kind of goes away by the wayside. Like he actually identifies his core point of stress from his childhood. And then they're like, oh yeah, well that, and so he thinks that everything that he has now will slip away from him, period.
Right. Did he say that?
No.
I thought he said something else.
Well, I think he understands it. I think he understands that, like, oh, I went into this to act out of that. And, right now, I still think it's going to go away. I still think this is not enough. I still think that I guess what I'm trying to clarify is he is still living in the vibratory stuck frequency of that childhood stuck pain body of feeling like his parents
of lack
and his parents are trapped, and it's up to him to gun-ho his way through any circumstances and make sure that he survives in this case through paying off of this bank loan, right? And so I'm sure right now, I'm drawing an extrapolation, he has very little bank loans and he has most of them paid off, unbeknownst to self, because he's still living and facilitating those actions of self out of like, oh, guess what? I am not going to be at the mercy of the bank. I will have the money to buy things, and I will have the money to buy things outright, and I will have the money, to pay them off.
Right. But it is coming out of that.
It's still coming out of that.
I mean, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with having money. And I imagine if he never worked another day in his life, he would still have enough money to live happily. I don't know. I imagine just based on his success. But anytime a little stress comes through, it is, on one hand, it's being used as a fuel for, his work.
Yeah.
Which, you can use negative things to fuel you. They work.
It's very successful because there's a lot of energy there.
Yeah.
The energy of the cortisol and adrenaline that you would use towards a saber-tooth tiger fight, he's using that to offset his poverty mindset and succeed in acting.
But it's the difference between running away from something or running to something. His professional work life is designed to run away from poverty, as opposed to someone else who's, I don't know, some other actor who's I'm running toward, I don't know what, the beauty of the craft or whatever.
I would clarify, the running is the pain body. So, right, you can be doing so in his case, this is how it looks. To begin with, he's running away from pain body of, I am going to do everything I can to make sure that one, my parents are not in this situation of helplessness, right? Because that's what it is helplessness. And then two, that then I am not, and then my children are not. So he is running away from helplessness and unsafety and, let's say, perceived poverty. I don't know how poor he was, but let's say that is what he's running away from. And then later, he's continuing to run. He's still, the momentum of the initial run is the inception of why he started running to begin with. And then later, he's still continuing to run. Now, in this case, you would go, well, of course, look, he's paid off his parents' loan. He has all these houses all over the world that are his. His children will never see poverty. They will never feel what he felt inside. But the inception of all the momentum that originated within his core is out of that initial run. That is still the cortisol. The cortisol fixated itself, locked itself up. I will say cortisol. No, that is not how chemical structure of a human body works. But in this case, the trauma and the pain locked itself up. It is a lock. It has established itself at whatever age he heard his dad say, I will never pay that off. I will die still having that loan. That's the lock. And all the action forward is from that point.
Right. Instead of
positive and negative.
Instead of at some point going, oh, wait a minute. Look at why I've been doing this and letting it go.
He already knows that. He already knows that why he's doing it.
But he hasn't let it go.
He has not. Yes, he has not. It's
still fueling him.
The momentum is still coming out of that.
Yeah.
And so his triggers, like when he thinks his movie is not going to succeed, go back to the origin, because he succeeded as an actor out of that origin. Oh, look, my family is disheveled and the press will see it, and then the press will eat us up, and then I will be forever shunned from Hollywood because all of a sudden Chris is a terrible father who doesn't know how to deal with flip out of his 3-year-old toddlers. That's coming out of that. It's still hitting that exact same pain body. So all of the triggers, he's going through the show trying to learn how to deal with stress in order to cool down his body and live longer. But what he's not doing is he's not going to the origin of the initial lock, of the momentum where everything came from.
Yeah. That's harder to film epically.
Yeah, I don't know if you're Darren Aronofsky and you're going to have to film that. I don't know how you film that.
I don't know. The drone pilot was like, where do I go? I can't fly in his mind.
Yes, right. So what we are addressing as planet Earth and what we are uncovering is amazing. We're uncovering these amazing feats of what it looks like to run away from saber-tooth tigers and what it looks like for it to have a lock on your body. But then we need to, in the mainstream media, like I think the occult in the background already has that, but we need to marry the energetics of the initial locks, right, with mainstream science of this is what cortisol and adrenaline does. But we need to take it all the way back to the origin, right? To the initial stuckness of that momentum, right? So that next time when you go to someone's birthday party, or next time when you shoot a movie and things come up, because things will inevitably come up, right?
That's life.
You don't have to be a rocket scientist to go, yeah, things will always be triggering.
Right.
But have a snap base of that awareness to the original origin of that core. When he's triggered at the edge of that, 900 feet drop, it is not the saber-tooth tiger. It is whatever his version of saber-tooth tiger is that takes you deep into that trigger. Yes, body survival is that, but the mind, right? The mind is controlling the body, but the mind's trigger in his case is very specific to his version of a saber-toothed tiger. And so hence, the version of limitless and awakening and enlightenment and wisdom is an individualized interpretation of that lock, because we're 1 of 8 billion. Let's just limit to that. It's bigger than that, but let's say we're 1 of 8 billion. So yes, the rules apply the same towards everyone, but the core is individualized, right? So I can give you the tools of how to uncover the core, but your core will be your own amazing story, your own Shakespearean play. And in Chris's case, one of the caveats of this amazing story is that statement that his father made, that I will die still owning bank money. Now, did the father mean that in
a literal sense?
Deterioration of the way? But no, it's set in his psyche.
That's the thing.
As this box, and he's holding on to that box.
That struck me. This is something that his father said to him 30, maybe years ago, that he still can quote verbatim.
Because that is his luck.
It's in
his
there.
saber-toothed tiger, his trigger, his cortisol and adrenaline is being triggered not through 900-foot buildings, not through freezing in the Arctic.
Right.
All of those are just the side effects of that initial momentum that sparred him out. Does that make sense?
There is, I think those acute things like 900-foot buildings and freezing in the Arctic are, he's putting himself in those situations because of that, right? You can trace that back.
Yes, but the origin that will actually have it. So if the goal of the show is limitless, right? Thus, how do I train my mind to live longer in order not to be subject to all of these stress factors, right? That is the goal. And so, for the show purposes, he's doing all of this shit in order to learn how to calm himself down, period, so he lives longer.
Mm-hmm.
And so, from the cinematic purposes, amazing building shots, amazing National Geographic footage and all of this. And then at the same time, Chris is vulnerable, and we get to see him as a vulnerable being who is subject to this extreme situations in order to be able to calm himself down.
Yes.
What we need to see is Chris in a small room crying because his father said something to him. And that is how healing looks like. And that is how living longer looks like.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see Chris Hemsworth crying. I don't want to see Chris Hemsworth crying. That is not what I'm saying.
Right.
But that is how that healing looks like. That is, and I will point out, him living through walking on that crane and him swimming in the Arctic will all come through extremely easily because he's able to calm his body, not based on this initial trigger, but based on the trigger of that saying, I will die still owning that loan.
Right.
That is where the healing is. That is where limitless is. If the goal is to be limitless, right? That is where longevity of life is. That is where stress-free living is uncovering that core. Now, the initial, the survival of the body brings up the trigger. That is what benefit to that is. I'm not saying everything he has done is unbeneficial. You need that trigger. It's great to have that trigger. In fact, you and I have been talking about how over the last 3 months, over the summer, we kind of like intuitively have engaged ourselves into all of these physically challenging things that we would have not done. It is not as extreme as what Chris is doing, but it's just like simple things like going down a steep slide. That is something that I would have jolted away from.
Or paragliding.
Paragliding, right? In the past, like, you're like, okay, I on a whim, we just decided, we woke up in the morning, we're like, oh, guess what? We're going paragliding today. And the universe lined itself up completely to make that happen.
Right. Because
we did not have days to stress about it. Like we had hours to calm our system down.
Right. It was when the option, when it was first like, oh, this is a possibility, I was like, I want to hurry up and agree to it before I have time to think about it. was my, and then once I've agreed to it, okay, well, I've paid, so I'm just going to be, I guess we didn't even pay yet, but we've committed. Okay, now it's
mentally
done.
Committed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So when the time between the inception of the idea that we're going to paraglide out of Tibetan mountains, kind of sort of in Nepal, but it's Tibet. It's the outskirts of Himalayas.
Yeah.
Right, it's like the initial
Foothills.
foothills of the Himalayas, right? It- You know that if like a month
It wasn't
in
as high.
advance.
The way you described it makes it seem like it was a lot higher than it was.
No, it's just the foothills, right? But it's still, if how about this?
It's
Without knowing anything, if we
it's
booked it
it's
ahead of
high
time,
enough that you're going to die if you fall.
yeah, if we booked that ahead of time before going to the foothill of Himalayas, before even going
It
there,
would have been
stressing out about it and reminiscing about
absolutely.
it for days
Right.
and days and days. And so that cortisol stress level would have been at the peak, but you would have been concentrating on that point.
But yeah, I mean, the fact that in that show with Chris, the psychiatrist said, in 3 days, you're going to walk across that thing.
Yeah, he spends 3 days
I'm like, oh
stressing
my
about
God, his next 3 days are ruined. And then the night before, he had all kinds of terrible dreams, and he had very, weirdly specific dreams of how it could go wrong.
Well, your body's just reminiscing through
sure.
all the case scenarios. But because he's already locked in that cortisol and adrenaline lock.
Yeah.
But again, I want to point out that lock, right? The reason why you and I have been subjecting ourselves to not as extreme of the things, but still extreme, is because right now the body needs the triggers. We're almost like walking into the trigger, subconscious to our awake mind. Intuitively, our body is leading us to all these things where we get triggered into a situation, and then we need to face the fear in order to get a spore, get the spore of it to be visible, so then we can trace it all the way down to the initial lock of that momentum.
I mean, yeah, I guess I had been thinking that it's, to almost like in the way that you train a muscle by repetition, like train it like that. The more I can put myself in uncomfortable situations, the more I will expand my comfort zone. But maybe it is through what you just described that does it.
But why?
What do you mean why?
If you put yourself in the uncomfortable situation of paragliding out of a mountain in Nepal, right? Then you're expanding your what did you say? Your
comfort zone.
Your comfort zone, okay? And when you expand your comfort zone, what does that do?
It means that there are less things in the world that are triggering.
Okay, so
right. It used to be that everything. Let me put this down. Everything inside of this little circle is cool, and everything outside of that circle, I don't like it. But the bigger you can make that circle through, now that I've been paragliding, I don't think I would have that the reaction I had the first time, right?
Yeah, but in that case, what are you trying to do? You're trying to not have that reaction, right? So more things you're familiar with, the less likely you have that reaction.
Right.
Why are you trying not to have that reaction?
I mean, because the reaction doesn't feel great.
Because when it doesn't feel great, is the goal to feel it less? Or you're right, you and I have been through this. A lot of times you're running, like if you go for a run and you're running because you already feel like shit, and the cortisol and adrenaline flux it will override the feeling of shit in order to distract you into a physical, challenging, debilitating situation to mask off something else.
Yeah.
So in that case, yes, you could go paragliding from the situation point of like, oh, well, guess what? If I am a firefighter and I'm used to like almost feeling I'm going to die every day from a fire, or am I a police officer and I'm like adrenaline rushed from like being shot at and raiding meth labs, all of that is very nice and big distraction in order not to feel the discomfort of what?
Discomfort of childhood trauma?
No, but we can, yes, but we can actually trace that down. Because when you feel the discomfort, what is your flavor of paragliding means?
I'm afraid of heights.
Oh, okay. Because?
Because when I was, I don't know, 10, 12, I fell out of a tree. I think, because I wasn't afraid of heights before that, and I haven't been afraid of heights ever since then.
But that's the stock energy of childhood trauma of being afraid of heights. But then you go back into I fell out of the tree, and what was the circumstances of that? What was the lock that took hold to where that is the truth right now? Unless you uncover that, nothing forward, right? No amount of adrenaline rushed jumps off of airplanes and paragliding out of Himalayan foothills will solve the reaction that you feel whenever you do that. The
I mean,
hold will always be there.
It was
unless you
yeah,
identify the original origin of it.
it was unsafe. I mean, I mean, luckily I fell like into a Y of a tree. Amazing, I could still have kids. But you know, I I thought I was going to die or get seriously hurt, and it wasn't even that high up. Now that I think about it, but
When
at
you're
the
a
time,
kid, things are
at the,
high up.
yeah, at the time, it was yeah. I mean, I was really scared.
Right. So my point to this is, yes, you could be. You could say that we're doing all of these dangerous things or things that we actually are afraid of in order to become more comfortable with being afraid, so we're afraid of less things. But I would say that is an escapism type of a approach to things. That is what adrenaline junkies are basically doing, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go paragliding and always be right there at the edge of fear of death because it feels awesome, right? Because there's that high, right? But the high usually comes out of the offsetting, the opposite thereof that you're holding within.
Wait, so why did you go paragliding?
The reason why I went paragliding is the same reason when we went to the city museum and I went down all those slides, right? And the same reason I hold whenever we do yoga and I hold the pose and it's uncomfortable, right? That there's that threshold where your body wants to back out of discomfort because discomfort, let's say you could leave it as, oh, well, it feels like I'm going to tear a muscle or it feels like I'm going to fall off and die or feels like whatever. Behind that feels like whatever, there's a huge lack of emotions that have nothing to do with you tearing this muscle or falling down from your death on down. There is something deeper.
Well, what's yours?
It depends.
For paragliding, what was it?
Paragliding. I did not have a fear of paragliding. Slides. Paragliding was not a trigger for me, but slides, right? So out of control.
I mean, that's
spinning out of control. So my trigger is going down the slide. I'm surrendering the momentum of this body to this slide that is, guess what? The whole point of the slide is you're spinning out of control. And so the second I'm spinning out of control, when?
it's like a children's toy is a slide. And it's spinning out of control is not how I would describe a slide.
No,
but
mentally.
I know I get
spin
it.
out of control.
Right. I'm not trying to make fun of you because I have my own ridiculous things.
Well, no. So I'm on the surface that by default has me going at a set of pace based on my weight and the slickness of this metal. Do you know what I mean? I am completely surrendered and out of control because truth is you're not stopping yourself on the slide. The slide is it. It's just going to take you there. And so being out of control is the root cause and the root trigger that is actually the stuck point of my origin of momentum if I am living in my active pain body.
Yeah.
So the non-escapism way of doing that is like, it's not that I'm going to rush myself and I'm going to go down all these slides in order to feel the high, because the high is masking the emotional lock that you have that is sitting there that you're actually not addressing. And so my way of doing it, or the reason why I'm doing it, the reason why I think we're being subjected to it, or I'm subjecting myself to it, is to see or look how much I'm fighting to have control because I'm having hard time surrendering. And I'm having hard time surrendering because I'm afraid of what it means to let go and just be with the universe. Because the perceived danger of not the slide, it's not the slide, perceived danger of being open to the universe and feeling calm and open to the universe is actually what the trigger is.
I guess when we were at the City Museum and I climbed up the inside of that dome, because I remember last time I got halfway up and I'm like, nope, and I went down. And this time I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. And the first half's easy because it's, almost vertical. And the second half is it's starting to arc over where you're, hanging over something. A, you're higher, and B, you're, down is no longer more stairs. Down is concrete. And it was really interesting to watch my body's reaction, my mind's reaction to that. As it's like, it feels super unsafe in one sense. And, you can lie to, okay, well, this is, there's 5 times more rebar than is necessary, and it's all welded in place. And,
For
all
those
that
who've never
logic
been
is
to
one
the
thing.
City Museum, it's basically like a huge dome. And then there's very safely welded cage that is the arc of the dome.
Yeah.
And it has rebar that what you would use to actually climb into this hanging rebar installation at the center. And then you're able to climb up on top of the dome.
So,
but you are hanging over the dome. Like for all intents and purposes, yes, the rebar is there to support you, but your mental comprehension is, I am like literally.
Yeah, but it's not solid. It's, there's every 2 or 3 inches, there's another, strand of rebar. And so you could,
trust and surrender.
You can see where you would fall.
Trust and surrender.
If I didn't have zipper pants, cell phone would fall out.
Yeah.
But it is obviously safe in real life, but it doesn't feel safe. That's the part that matters. It was fascinating to watch my reaction to it. And there is definitely an aspect of control that, I have to surrender to whoever built this did a good job. I have to surrender to, this is, this is here to support me. So, some of that's trying to logic it away, but you can't logic the fear away. So it's more than that.
Yeah, no, the fear is there because your body is in danger.
Right.
Right. So the body perceives the danger because you're literally looking at a 4-story drop or 3-story drop. I don't know, maybe even more. And you're kind of like balancing on these tiny little rebar, what it feels like on this drop.
And at the top is the worst part because it's now you have to like almost, because the rebar is not as, like little foothold stairs. It's like aiming down. So you just kind of slide down into this like bird cage at the top. And that was like the worst part.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have never done that before.
Yeah, me either. I did half of it, but I chickened out last time.
Yeah, but the kids, Aiden has done it.
I think so.
When he was little. And this time I went and I thought, okay, yeah, you guys can do that, but I'm going to do it. And I was standing at the bottom there going, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And then I'm like,
why am I not going to do that?
Well, no, I know I'm afraid. And then I'm like, okay, well, I have to push past the fear.
I was afraid. And I'm like, part of me is like, damn it, I'm going to do it. To prove to myself that I can do it.
Yeah.
But, it was an interesting psychological experiment. That was scarier than paragliding was to me.
Oh, yeah, that's much scarier than paragliding.
I mean, paragliding, the first 10 seconds when you're off the ground was nothing. And then when the, it's tandem, there's a professional, when he's like ascending, that was a little uncomfortable. And I'm the whole time I'm holding on way too tight. I know that. I'm like,
there's something about the straps that offer security.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my arms were sore afterward because of how hard I held on.
Yeah, I wasn't.
I was white knuckled. Everything was incredibly sore. Like, I can't even stretch it out. It was so tight. Only halfway through did I actually find it. He's like, do that. I'm like, no. He's like, do it. I'm like,
yeah, I guess paragliding did not trigger me, but yeah, that cage did, and the slides, and on the outside. So maybe you should flash some pictures of the City Museum. The outside things where it's those little tunnels that go up. that are, the whole point of it is that it's exposed. It's closed through
Oh,
rebarb or through net
yeah.
metal, but they are just in the air.
You know what's weird is like climbing those things, which is, just as far of a fall, if not further, honestly, didn't bother me. It was the dome that bothered me.
I was bothered by both.
Like
Or
climbing
tight spaces.
to the air, up to the airplane and up and down.
Going through tight spaces too. Like
That
that's a thing for me. Go tight spaces in the dark. That's a thing for me.
Well, I didn't like those. They were just unpleasant. They weren't like triggering. They were just
No,
uncomfortable.
that initial body lock
Claustrophobia.
that causes you not to go into a space. I had that in all of those.
Like the outside thing, because it is tight, right? You wouldn't be able to fit two people into it, but it's also rebar, so it's open, so you can see through it, so it doesn't feel tight.
Your shoe would drop through it.
Yeah, anything that's not secured to your person is going to fall out, and hit someone in the head, 4 stories down. Those didn't bother me. It's weird.
No, but
well,
think about it.
I'm also just focused on the process of getting down because it's uncomfortable, it's tight, it's it's a little painful on the hands. Like every time I do it, I'm like, I need to bring like climbing gloves or something. Every time, and I always forget.
I have scars on my shins because my shins are so exposed to, to the environment. Yeah, but think about it. There are triggers, and the trigger that fear brings up, that initial like, oh, I shouldn't do this. Yes, it is of that moment. It is of that moment, just like all what Chris is doing in Limitless, like that initial push of the body, right? But that is that moment. But that moment is coming out of momentum of the core that is you. Think about, try to trace the energy right now in your body. Yes, I'm in imminent danger right now, but think about where it's coming from.
I'm not sure. It feels like it's a fear of death and bodily injury. That feels, that's the obvious thing.
No, okay. With me, I guess, can you do this? I am able to do this. If I can, death of imminent injury, if you can plot that on the space and time continuum, would you plot that into that moment?
No, it's always 2 or 3 seconds in the future. I'm not dead yet, but as soon as this rebar goes away, or as soon as I slip, or as soon as whatever, then it's not current death, it's imminent death. A couple seconds in the future when it all fails and I fall to my doom.
Yes, but think about the fear of falling as an energetic form, like as a bubble, like as a sphere of energy.
Okay.
If you had to place that on space and time continuum, are you placing that fear 2 seconds into the future, or in the moment of now, or does it go somewhere else? If it had to float in a nebulous form of existence,
it feels very current and present.
Okay, it doesn't to me.
Where is it for you? In the past?
Yeah, it goes into like the imminent lock that we have as a human condition.
Like, and I can pinpoint the exact moment when after which I had a fear of heights, and it doesn't even go there. That's just like some, which is weird because it's like you'd think that's exactly where it would go.
Yeah,
and
no.
I continued to climb trees after that, so it wasn't debilitating. But I don't like the feeling. Like, I like roller coasters. I like the belly feeling you get from quote falling on a roller coaster and whatever. But what I don't like is the disoriented. Like if you're up somewhere high and looking down is may not be great, but looking up is always worse to me. If I'm on on a ladder Climbing up, looking down, okay, whatever. But looking up is almost vertigo inducing to me. 100 times worse to look up than it is to look down.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think to some extent an origin of our human condition lays in the fear of non-existence.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's everything that is alive as its primary goal continue to exist. And everything that we do is, A, continue to exist, and B, make more of us
Yeah, but
and make sure they exist too.
but our personalized story of our pain body sets that into motion based on our, trauma and upbringing and family situations and
Right.
and all that.
And so,
So we personalize that set.
right, continue to exist ends up and make sure I have enough money so that I'm not poor like dad is or whatever. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Well, in his case, it's not like poor like my dad is at the mercy
of the bank.
of the bank. There was two things there. To him, like did dad actually think that he was poor? Maybe they were poor. Like that could be its own other thing. But with Chris, it was also mercy of someone else.
Yeah,
Like stuck in a situation where he can't climb out of that hopelessness. And in this case, it happens to be bank is the stuckness.
Hmm. I guess I didn't get that. I got it more of
Poor.
poor.
Yeah.
Than
But no, that's very much a big part of that. But there's two aspects there. There's two things to unravel.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, I think everything needs to go back to the source to bring it all back.
Yeah.
If you go back to the source and you feel the source of your distress, maybe, or your subconscious beliefs or your subconscious functionalities into the world, then I think you can show up in the world in truth. Like which is the only thing you really anyone can ask anyone is when you're going into the situation, bring your truth in. But then there's got to be this responsibility for you to step back and go, is this the truth that I want to bring into the situation? And then if you then evaluate of why you're doing it, and if you're doing it for this reason, then you'll go, wait, should I even be doing it if I'm doing this for this reason? Right? If I'm doing it for this reason and this reason is and I'm aware of that reason, is this a good reason to be doing something out of?
Yeah.
Or should I just abstain
Right.
and not even do the good thing, such as go to someone's birthday party and wish them happy birthday?
Right.
Not because I don't love this person. Maybe in this case, because I love this person.
Right. Or, I think it's possible to, I know I have been in the wrong place and been able to shift into a right place.
Oh,
And
yeah, if you can do that, that's
it
great.
doesn't take a lot of time to do. If you just, you could just sit down for 5 minutes and clear it out. And that often works for me. So you could move it from a wrong place into a right place. Or more accurately, you could release the wrong place, at least for right now.
Yeah, if you're aware and you're able to release it, that's the ideal situation. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The ideal situation is you in the right place, period. And then if you happen to get triggered and you see yourself being triggered, you're completely aware of it.
That's spicy.
The cayenne peppers at the bottom.
I think so.
Yeah. And so just become right. You can feel what it actually is to be in that heart flowing, centered mind of love and light. And then the second you can anchor into that space and spend time there, you can easily then start to recognize when you're being pulled away from it, right? And when you're being pulled away from it then the right thing to do is go, okay, well, where am I being pulled into? And recognize the triggers that are pulling you down.
Yeah.
And then if you are going to a birthday party and wishing somebody happy birthday, evaluate, wait, am I going out of one of these space or if I'm going out of here? And if I am going out of this, what can I do to bring myself up over here? What is it that I need to release? What is it that I need to acknowledge or actualize? As like, oh look, here's this thing again. And go, okay, yeah, I'm done with that one. And then choose to come into the space. And then, going back to the beginning, your world manifest, I guess, if that's the one I want to use right now, but your reality comes out of that. The release, the lack of stress, the lack of dying early, the lack of heart disease comes out of that.
Right. That's
Uh,
where
uh, uh,
true peace comes from. True
yeah.
calm,
And not,
extreme sports. I mean, that can be a tool to help uncover it, to help, identify it and, through that acknowledge and release it. And, I do think there is something to, getting used to expanding your comfort zone, right? If he had to walk on that thing again, it wouldn't be as bad as it was the first time.
yeah. No, I mean, but that's also life experience.
Yeah.
That's just like living life on Earth. Like, oh,
Yeah.
guess what? I go paragliding. Like when I went paragliding, I just went paragliding, and that was awesome. It does not have to have triggers in it.
Right. Yeah. I think if I were to climb up that thing, that dome again, it would probably still be scary, but it wouldn't be as bad as it was the first time.
Yeah, but when it's there the first time, the goal, if if life has a goal, is to identify where it's taking you deep down into the psyche of your mind, right? That's why you hold the yoga poses and the yin yogas for so long, because it is not about the muscle tear, right? It is not about like physical danger to your being. Same thing with Kundalini yoga, right? But it triggers something else. It just triggers something else that you're like, wait, what? How is this even correlated to it?
Yeah.
But it is. It's just correlated in this nuance and this finagled way that you would have never thought of.
Bring stuff up.
Yeah. And so then the goal is to bring that up, to bring up past the veil of like, oh, well, this is just a survival instinct for the human body because I don't want to die. It is not that. There's something else. Yes, that's there, right? Dot dot dot, I die alone, or whatever, or dot dot dot, I die. But in between the very obvious dying and very obvious, oh yeah, I'm just triggering myself into this extreme situation, there is a caveat that is your own personal little bubble of truth that you need to face, right? In Egyptian mystery schools, why they did the whole, remember one of the challenges that they did was initiate, once he reached a certain level of personal awareness, had to dive into dark waters full of crocodiles, and like go under, and then under the water found this little passage that was a pass through into the other chamber, come up for air, or maybe not even come up for air, and then continue into a third passage, and that's where the exit was. And then there were crocodiles in there too, right? So the fear of being spiked there, right? It's the same thing. You're being initiated into a fear spike. But then what you're doing is you're seeing your being, you're seeing your soul self from that standpoint of alchemical transformation, where you face the core that is you. You're raw and you're facing the core that is you. But in that facing, you see kind of like the vomit that is your pain body, let's say, or your personal choice into the narrative of this lifetime. That's healing. That's limitless. That's stress relief. Is that seeing the core, that the what we don't want to look at. And yeah, you can hide behind the story of like, oh well, this is danger. Of course, my body's just simply reacting this way out of danger. But when we each time we do that, we miss the opportunity of what's actually behind that.
Yeah.
Right. And we could sit there and we could meditate and we can lower our heart rate and we can just like allow it to go away. But what we should be doing, what the science should be positioning ourselves into is like, no, let's dive deeper. Once the heart rate is up, once you're going crazy and you're just overloading, when you come down, what is actually there? What is at the core? Past the the excuse is that this is just dangerous to my soul. I'm sorry, to your physical form. Because then you actually perceive this as danger to the soul. And that's what you're not recognizing. And that's when you go to birthday parties and unbeknownst to self ruin them because you're actually there for all the wrong reasons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.